everyone, our team is Danonenes and today we're going to present our circular proposal to Danone. To begin, Danone is a global company of food and beverage with products in dairy, bottled water, plant-based foods, and specialized nutrition. For this project, we use Danone as an example to understand how the food and beverage packaging industry still works under a mostly linear model. This means that the raw materials are extracted, plastic packaging is produced. Products are filled and distributed, and consumers use them, and then the packaging is either recycled, discarded, or sent to landfill. In Activity 4A, we found that Danone generates 670,107 tons of plastic in 2024, which shows that the packaging is one of the company's main circularity challenges. The main problem is that many packaging formats still depend on the fossil-based plastic, while collection and recycling systems are not always strong enough to recover the materials after the use. These create environmental impacts such as plastic pollution and greenhouse gases emissions. It also creates economic impacts because valuable materials are lost, and social impacts because communities and consumers increasingly expect companies to manage resources and waste more responsibly.
We analyzed several Danone products and we found two main hotspots in their LCA. Firstly, raw material extraction, since most of the material they use for packaging is plastics and they rely on fossil fuels and heavy energy inputs before they are even manufacturing. This is just counting the extraction. Secondly, the end of life, in which most packaging end up in the landfill because they are made of two complex materials that are a mix of biological and technical materials according to the butterfly diagram. And because they are blended so tightly, they are very hard to separate, let alone recycle.
To better understand circularity in the food and beverage industry, we compare Danone and Nestlé. Both companies have committed to reducing plastic waste by increasing recycled content and improving packaging design. However, Danone focuses on improving PET recovery and reducing virgin plastic, while Nestlé has expanded refill system and alternative packaging materials. Despite these efforts, both companies still depend heavily on single-use packaging and face challenges such as limited recycling infrastructure and low consumer participation. So this comparison shows that achieving a truly circular economy requires collaboration across the entire industry and not just individual company initiatives.
For this strategy, we're suggesting that the Mexican dairy and bottled beverage industries change their practices into a wide industry standard of changing their mixed materials in polymers to a monopolymer material in their packaging so that it can be more compatible with the recycling system in Mexico. And we're also doing a pool system between the companies so that they can address the same infrastructure for the monopolymers instead of duplicating infrastructures for each one of them. We are here including the companies, the government, and the NGOs as the main actors of the system. The companies do the redesigning and the implementation of the infrastructure. The government is in charge of the taxes, the sanctions, and other types of regulations in environmental impacts. And the NGOs can address as third-party verificators the traceability and the circularity of all the project. Then the circular economy principles that we're addressing are mainly the redesigning in the packaging, the reducing in the virgin plastic extraction, and the recycling part in the end of the life of our packages. But we can also address a fourth one, which can be the reducing part with the refilling systems. As for the expected impacts, if the sector can address a 63% of reduction in their packaging and a reduction in virgin plastic by 17%, we're expecting tons and hundreds of millions of plastic bottles avoided in landfills, and we can also address the carbon footprint hotspot identified in our LCA. However, a main limitation that we can find is that the monoplastic can be highly costly to the companies, so that we can face some resistance towards the companies that don't want to share immediately these type of systems. And finally, we can address a little bit of competitiveness in this shared material system.
For this model to actually work at scale, it's not as simple as just changing the packaging. A lot of things will need to happen. First, the policy. Mexico will need a mandatory extended producer responsibility law. Right now, everything is voluntary, so if a company doesn't comply, nothing really happens, and that slows everything down. And second, the investment. Building a collection and refill system is expensive, and no single company wants to pay for something that benefits everyone. This is where the government or a shared industry fund will need to step in. Third, the technology. There is still no perfect alternative that can replace multi-layer packaging without affecting shelf life, and if you get it wrong, you could end up creating more food and waste instead. And finally, the behavior. All of this depends on people actually returning or reusing the packaging. If participation is slow, the whole system falls apart. And honestly, our analysis shows the issue isn't that companies don't want to change, it's that they can do it alone, and the real challenge is infrastructure and collaboration. For my conclusion, I realized that the company's scales of operation entails both significant influence and a heightened level of responsibility. Its dependence on a linear production model generates environmental, economic, and social risk, reinforcing that sustainability is not only an ethical obligation but also a strategic imperative.
Well, I would conclude that the food and beverage industry still has some problems to address their main operational challenges, including their extraction of virgin materials for packaging and the end of life that most of the times ends up in disposal, and they have to address this as well as keeping the packaging food safe.
As for me, I learned that in this industry as well, evaluating their circularity and identifying the main issues in the linear operation within tools like LCA, we can see like great opportunities that can be addressed in the supply chain, especially in the design phase. And also these operations can lead to more clear strategic hotspots and introducing circular economy in a better way through the supply chain.
Yeah, I think that overall this project shows that circular economy goes far beyond recycling, and it requires companies to rethink the way they design, produce, and recover their entire life cycle. And a lot of companies have made important progress achieving through circularity, but will require continuous innovation, collaboration, and commitment from business, government, and consumers.
And for me, throughout this project and this course, is that circular economy can start with small, realistic actions rather than major transformation. And analyzing companies like Danone or all other companies show me that improving internal processes can make a meaningful contribution to a more sustainable business model.